Okay, now the difference is, what if it's not a university? What if it's another company I'm hiring? I'm hiring a specialist or an engineer, an engineering firm, whatever. Someone who's not government related. So that's a payment to a subcontractor. So again, did they physically do the work in Canada becomes a question. Or did they subcontract that to India? Hey, all these things, you're supposed to ask these questions, because they're going to come and start asking these. Just because I paid the Canadian contractor doesn't mean all the work was done there. They might have subcontracted that. And the government's really good at looking through on asking all kinds of good questions. Okay? Were they arm's length? Like, was it a subsidiary of mine? I controlled that company and I had it doing work for me. In that case, I can claim the actual cost of that company, but I can't mark it up, as you'd expect. So pretty fair there. Do they file a Canadian tax return? And the way that they check that is they say, did they invoice you with an HST number? Which then they have to file a Canadian tax return. So every contractor, they ask, what's its business number or HST number? And that should be on every invoice. So every time they invoice you, the HST number legally has to be on there. Shouldn't be a problem. Okay? Other than industries where you have exempt or zero-rated kind of suppliers. Okay? Probably the biggest issue is the potential for a double dip. Okay? The law says to claim SR&ED credits, it could either be the performer or the payer. Now, if it's two Canadian contractors, what could happen is the performer could claim the credits, receive money from the payer who didn't know the performer's claiming the credits, and the payer claims the payments to the contractor. It's called a double dip. Okay. Happens a lot. And they're going to catch it because when the payer paid, guess whose business number they put on their form? And then when you claim, well, computers go, oh, potential problem here. And then they come start asking, hey, what project was this? Is that the same oh, we got a big problem, right? I've seen this scenario lots of times, and heaven forbid those companies aren't on good terms anymore. Real fights can break out, and you can have it held up for years. Government's going to sit on all the credit. They'll say, hey, we'll hold all the money until you guys settle it, and take all the time you want. We're in no hurry, right?
That should be in your contract.
That should be in the contract. I recommend that every contract says, in the event that any of the work qualifies for SR&ED credits, we reserve the right to the credit. Period. Full stop. And that's all the government, they say we don't care. Like, that's a business decision. You should factor it into your costs and what you charge, and just like any other business decision, and who gets it. Don't make us the arbitrator.
So if I'm a subcontractor, I get paid and then I also claim on my time. I get paid, so you subcontract me.
Right.
I get paid by you. And then
So the first thing I'm going to say is, Ramsey, are you going to claim any of this work for credit? Because I'm planning to claim it, right? If I say I'm planning to claim it, then everything you get from me is a contract payment. So you have the right to claim your expenses, right? And then reduce them by any contract payments received, down to zero. So let's say it cost you $30,000, but you charge me $50,000, right? You'd have a $30,000 eligible, but $50,000 contract, reduce it. You'd have nothing. Okay? But let's say you spent $50,000 because it was more complicated than you thought, and I only paid you $30,000.
right.
Okay? You can claim the $50,000, reduce it by the $30,000 I paid you, and still get credits on the remaining $20,000 because you had cost overrun. You didn't know how complicated this was.
Say that, you don't care about the SR&D, and I can claim it technically on the.
Yep.
Say
That's fine, as long as I don't claim it.
As long as you don't claim it. So
Don't
I
wor-
get paid the 50 plus I can claim
Right.
on the 30.
Because it's only reduced by government assistance and contract payments under the law. Contract payments defined in the Act. Contract payment means the other Canadian claimant filed under Section 37, which means they filed a shred claim for SR&ED. If they did not file not only they're Canadian, if they did not file a shred claim for that project, it's not a contract payment. Right. The only thing that makes it a contract payment is them claiming shred credit. Then it's a contract payment. Okay?
David,
Yes?
can you comment on the differences between third-party payments or just hiring a university to do R&D for you?
Yeah, I wish I could. I'm as confused on that issue as anyone. So the question was, how do you determine if a university's just doing contract research for you or if they're actually doing the research? I had a situation right now where I claimed a client as a third-party payment. It was a university professor who was actually the professor that we hired at the university, but it was his own company that hired him, right? So I said, well, that's a third-party payment. And they said, well, no, it's a contractor payment. And I'm saying, well, where's the mind and management? It's the same guy. Like, is he controlling it here as the university, or is he controlling it in the company? It's this actual same person. Reminded me of, a show called WKRP, where I'm saying, it's Dr. Johnny Fever or the RIP. But he is the rip, you know, it's the same guy. So the reviewer said, well, I think it's a subcontract payment, and it actually created some negative implications for us. And he didn't even know either. He said, I'd never seen this situation. Neither had I. Answer is, control of the work is what you're supposed to look at. Who's making the recommendations on the research? Who's defining the uncertainty? Who's defining prior art? And the problem is, in many cases, it's not clear. Like in that case, it's the same guy. Did he make these decisions? Did this individual make the decision where he's wearing this hat or that hat? It's hard to say because it's the same person. Again, it's up to the CRA on how to interpret it, but I wouldn't say there is a right or wrong. It's one of these things where I try to file the best I can and then realize that there's gray areas where it may not end up. But they're going to look at who has more control on the input. So again, where I'm looking at people working with universities and they're developing protocols, which they usually are, who's making the input on the protocol? Like what changes? Who's got evidence of that? If the client's telling the university, here, try these protocols, and the university's just, doing what they're told like a good technician would, then I'd say it's subcontract work. If the university's giving ideas on what the protocol should be, then I'd flip it the other way. But again, this is the problem with SR&ED. There's black and white, but then there's a lot of gray where you're going to have to apply your professional judgment each time. Okay. Arm's length contracting. These are, like I say, this rule is easy. You just can't if you control a company, a subsidiary, you can't mark up the costs artificially. And this rule came around because some companies were abusing it. I'd have a big company like maybe I'm General Motors or Boeing, and I own all these subsidiary companies, and one makes wiring, and one makes cables, and one makes this, but I'm 100% owner. I spend $100 on a part, and I sell it to another one of my companies for $1,000, and then I sell it to another company for $3,000, and I claim on the $3,000. Well, I took a $100 part, and I turned it into a $3,000 part myself. You're not allowed to do that. Okay?
Only the pharmaceuticals.
Well, if they play the shell game well, I'm sure they get away with it. Okay, so really it's your actual cost. For goods, it's your actual cost. For services, if I take your part and I spend $1,000 of labor, so I take a $10,000 part and spend $1,000 of labor, I actually spend $1,000, then $11,000 is my eligible, right? But not what I would charge you. It's what I actually pay my employees, not what their billing rate would be or something, what I would charge an arm's length person.